I'd love to tell you a little story that I heard this last week. So, if you've been following my YouTube channel, I've been talking about the cluster that has ensued from the NAR settlement in the last year and what the concrete effects of this settlement have made on our market. It's really still too early to see what long term changes will come out of this, but I want to try to report what is happening from the field, so to speak, as it's happening, because it's pretty interesting. So, one of the big changes is that buyer agency compensation is no longer listed on the MLS. So, when you're going to take a look at a house with a buyer, you actually don't know how much the house costs until you get a confirmation of what the seller is willing to pay a buyer agent. Because of the seller is not wanting to pay a buyer agent, then the buyer is paying their agent themselves, right? And that obviously changes the cost of the house to the buyer, which then will affect what they offer on the house. So, what good buyer agents do is that they're collecting all of the available information. They do tons of research on a house before you even visit the house, usually with the buyer. So, for example, my clients email my assistant when they see a house that they want to see, and we all look over the documents together for a house before we go see it. Why is that? Well, because if we see in the disclosure, for example, that the house needs $50,000 worth of structural repairs, that might be a deal breaker to my clients. And we can save everybody time by just not going to see the house. Now, if we found that a house needed $50,000 in the disclosure, we could all be doing these calculations to understand the true cost of the house and see if my client wanted to bite it all, right? If they did want to go see it. So I would research comps to see if the house was listed appropriately in the first place, and then we would make our adjustments given the known $50,000 expense. Okay, makes sense, right? Now, because the buyer agency compensation has been taken off of MLS, that is one more adjustment and bit of research that we need to do to collect and understand the true cost of the house. And it only makes sense then that if a seller is offering to pay buyer agency compensation, that they do that up front so that buyers understand what the cost of a house is and can make an offer. Okay, I think I've driven home this point. Okay, the paperwork mechanism that secures buyer agency compensation with the seller is called Form 220. Any good list agent is going to have that readily available, or better yet, they will have sent it out to agents as a way to market the property. But this last week, I heard from realtor friends that they were working with sellers who told them, maybe we'll offer buyer agency compensation and maybe we won't. It really just depends on the offer that we get. Now, this is absolutely terrible thinking, but will be nice for a second. The seller probably just has their bottom line on their mind, as they should. They should be thinking about their bottom line. And they're just thinking, hey, if I can get away with paying less, then I will. But what they don't know is that proceeding this way, while, there's nothing illegal about that, it's a grave tactical error. So first of all, they're forgetting that their buyer agent has already had an agreement in place with their client for what they will be paid by the time they bring an offer. That's already settled. Now, most likely the buyer agent will be unwilling or maybe unable to give their clients a discount on their services just because their client is unwilling to make a decent offer. All right. But even more importantly, that seller is unlikely to get offers in the first place simply because without receiving a signed Form 220, buyers have no idea how much the house costs. So if the house is listed at 600,000, is it that or is it 615,000 if the buyers are paying their agent something? I've been in real estate for almost a decade now, and as a top producer, dealing with high volume. And I know for a fact that nothing slams on the brakes more than confusion for buyers. All right, so this analogy isn't perfect, but please bear with me. If I'm going to the grocery store and I'm looking at a jar of olives and there is no clear price tag, that jar maybe in my mind it could be anywhere from $10 to $20. I'm probably not going to look at that jar very long. Now, it might actually be a $10 jar that I might actually be willing to buy, but without adequate information, I'm going to pass that jar up and I'm going to go look at the next jar that is clearly labeled, that I know exactly what the cost of it is. And that is the exact same thing that is going to happen in this market for sellers who are not exceedingly clear from the start about what they will pay a buyer's agent. And for list agents who are not doing a good job making sure that the messaging is clear, they're going to pay a price too. Those sellers are likely to end up on the market for far longer than other sellers who do pay a buyer's agent and make that clear from the start. So, historical data on this is crystal clear. Time on market always leads to a lower sales price. It doesn't go in the other direction. Buyers end up thinking that the longer a property is on the market, there must be something wrong with the house. Now, sometimes the only problem is the list price, not the house, really. In this case, now that we're in an era where transparency has been taken away and there's confusion over what the cost of a house may actually be to buyers. So that's not good. But anyway, stay tuned for more notes from the field and get in touch anytime if you want to talk about any of this. I am here for you.